they're one of those teams you can't ever really count out, even if they do start losing some pieces, because the Rays are one of those organizations and farm systems that they bring somebody from Timbuktu that's out of nowhere that's just going to blow the socks off people, and I think that they're going to continue that.
And welcome to this edition of the 941 Sports Zone. I'm John Massoni here with two very special guests tonight. My co-host, John Peacock, could not be here tonight. So starting with the first person on my immediate left, Mr. Monty Jacobs, who's been on our show on the first show right here from Douglas Jeep. And Monty, appreciate you being here with us for a little while tonight.
Absolutely.
And our special guest in the seat that I guess only another John can sit in, John Reynolds, SNN Sports Director. And John, I appreciate you being here tonight. Going to get your insight into not just local sports, but a little state and national sports as well. So thanks for being here tonight.
I'm glad to be here. I don't know if I can fill the shoes or fill the seat of Coach Peacock, but I'll do my best.
Oh, you can do a good job. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. Every week we always kind of do a little recap from last week's show. Last week we had our former head coach of Venice High School, Nick Coleman, come on and discuss a little bit about some things he's seen change over the years in high school sports. A guy who, gosh, back in the late 90s was running the Veer, which was old school back then, but he was a guy who put a lot of the framework in for what we're seeing successfulness for Venice High School currently in the football program. We also talked a little bit about, again, how good the Rays have been playing this since the beginning of the season, a 13-0 start, and how they're continuing to play. And that'll probably be another subject we'll have tonight as well, because the Rays are continuing to play very, very well, coming off a big weekend series against the Yankees. And then a little recap. We talked about our picks for the Kentucky Derby. And now we'll recap what actually happened at the Kentucky Derby with John, who is a Kentuckian. I'm seeing on your bio. And then, so anyways, to start, John, thanks again for being here. We really do appreciate it. How did you manage to find SNN Sarasota? I know you went to Western Kentucky University, but how'd you get all the way down here?
Well, so Western obviously has a great broadcasting program.
Okay.
So obviously, this is what I've always wanted to do. I played sports growing up, wasn't very great at them. Realized I had to talk about them for a living if I wanted to stay around sports. So obviously, I then stayed in Bowling Green, worked at a CBS NBC station in Bowling Green, and then the power of YouTube, funny or not, believe it or not, brought me here. SNN was looking for a sports director. I hadn't applied to come here, but my boss was looking for sports reels on YouTube. One of mine was the first one that came up. My first was a stand-up in front of a Tampa Bay Rays sign because the minor league affiliate was in Bowling Green, the Hot Rods.
Okay.
And he's like, oh, that's Tampa connection. We cover Tampa stuff. Let me give this guy a call. And from there, it just played itself out, and here I am.
That's cool. I mean, that's sometimes the littlest things, right, Monty? You don't know how you get all connections, which even how our relationship sort of began and how it's elevated to you guys being obviously a sponsor for us and a sponsor for a lot of stuff around the area, especially local stuff.
Yeah, it makes us happy to be involved. It's great to meet John. I mean, he's a fantastic addition to local sports. I mean, we talk a lot and communicate a lot about local stuff, and he puts stuff on air for us, and it's just a great thing. As far as the association locally with you and the stuff going on here in town, I mean, it's made my job fun. I mean, selling cars is fun, but being able to sell cars and do all this stuff and meet all these great people is crazy.
Well, I do know this, that on a Friday night football especially, everybody gathered here to do this show right now has a lot of connection with each other, more than we realize in so many ways.
Oh, absolutely.
Because obviously you're connected to what the guys at Vibrant Aspect Media do. I get a very, very excited text message from Monty about 9:15, 9:30 on a Friday night.
That's right.
It says, "Can you get me the stats?"
Yeah.
And then that somehow makes its way from you over to John. So this chain right here is exactly where it needs to be. So and it does. I think in a lot of ways, it kind of really makes it for a gel for the evening, especially because I don't know how much you know, John, but kids watch. They watch it the next day. They watch it all the time, and just any mention of, hey, so and so had 2 TDs or whatever else it was, and Monty's a big facilitator of that. So we always appreciate that. I know that the coaches, the parents as well, really appreciate that on
That's
Friday
great.
nights.
Glad to do it.
Oh, no doubt. Again, ended up at SNN. You have like a favorite sport you'd like to cover? Like, are you a football guy, a basketball guy, or what's your fave?
I'm a baseball guy, believe it or not. Coming here, obviously covering high school football especially, it's kind of built my interest to that even more. I mean, I grew up a Steelers fan professionally, but obviously high school football is huge in the state of Florida. Kentucky, not as much, more basketball driven, but I grew up a huge baseball fan, so that's kind of my passion. My lane is baseball, but obviously as a sports director, you can't really show too much love in one aspect. You got to kind of sprinkle it around. So I wasn't a huge hockey guy. Learned to like hockey because the Lightning are huge down here.
yeah.
So obviously I'm just trying to get a little bit of everything.
Good. St. Louis Cardinals is what I saw.
Absolutely,
Huh?
yes.
And that's a rich tradition for baseball with the Cardinals. A little down this year.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I'm softening the blow a little bit, a little down. But you know what though? I mean, somebody was saying, and I don't know I've never seen what it was, but I think they said like maybe not a losing season for like maybe 20 out of 20 something, a long time of not having a losing year for the Cardinals.
It's been a long time. So it's a hard pill to swallow this year, seeing them at the bottom of the division and pretty much bottom of the National League. I think there's only one record worse than them in the National League. So it's been a tough pill to swallow, and then see the Pirates at the top, which is cool covering them from a spring training perspective here, but it hurts me a little bit to see them at the top of the division. But
baseball affiliation, Monty, for you?
Well, I grew up in Northwest Indiana, so I was a Cubs fan.
Oh,
that was my
I can
option.
leave now, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
There goes the chain. The relationship's been broken now.
No, as a kid, Wrigley Field. I mean, that was the big. Hey, if you get straight A's, I'll take you to a ball game. Hey, if you guys win the Little League championship, I'll take you to a ball game. That was the big thing. So the friendly confines of Wrigley Field made me love baseball.
Went to Wrigleyville once and had a blast.
Yeah, it's great.
And I would tell you that I would recommend it to anybody that gets a chance to kind of go wander around down there any time of the year. It's a cool place. And you know, that's Cardinals Cubs tradition rich. Big rivalry, so that's a really cool deal.
I've been
there
to
as well.
Wrigley once as well, and it was not as fun. It was rainy, it was cloudy. It was because I was a Cardinals fan at a Pirates-Cubs game, so it was when David Freese was with the Pirates, and I cheered on David Freese, got a lot of weird looks from the crowd. I was forced to wear a Cubs poncho, though, because it was raining so bad. Did not like that, but I didn't want to sit there soaking wet.
Yeah, sometimes you make concessions to your fandom to in order to stay dry or whatever it may be. Also, I know that you're also tradition rich with your. I saw a Steelers fan.
Yep.
And also a Celtics fan.
Yes.
So Celtics, I got a lot. We'll talk a little bit about that later on as far as NBA playoffs. But Steelers had a great draft this year. I mean, if you follow the draft, and we talked about it in a number of different times in the show this past couple weeks. But Steelers did a nice job, and another team that does not lose very much. They're always sort of right there at the edge. I mean, Tomlin hasn't had a losing season since he's been there, and that's 3 coaches in 50 years with the Steelers. So
seeing the Steelers always on top has been nice as a football fan. So from last year they didn't make the playoffs, but still didn't have a losing record. So it was kind of happy, but kind of sad in the same instance. But yeah, the draft was fantastic this year. Yes, I reflect on my sports fandom. You got Cardinals, Celtics, and Steelers. I don't guess I like to lose very much. So coming down here, obviously covering Venice, you guys win it a lot. So I guess we're just staying in that same lane of covering victors.
Well, so coming from the opposite direction, being a Cubs fan, where do you align with everything else?
So I am a Cubs fan, but I moved here to this area 22 years ago. So I am a Rays fan.
Yeah. I think we all kind of have that sort of I'm a Rays fan.
I'm a Rays
situation.
fan.
Yeah.
So for football, you know, I was in Indiana, so the Colts came along, so was a Colts fan, but now I've evolved into a Buccaneers fan. So I really believe that you can be have those fond memories, but where you live, you need to be participating in the sports where you live too.
I'm a New York guy, and I have all my affiliations outside of, and how I keep this one is just sort of a weird way, but I'm a New York Jets fan. Other than that, I've sort of abandoned it and gone on to things that it's great to see the Rays do as well as they're doing now, and consistently sort of always being competitive. And then the Lightning have been just the number one franchise maybe in all of sports, the way it's run and how things are handled. So you can take that and how do you not root for that organization for as much as they do, not only on the ice but in the community as well. Jeff Vinnick, just a magnificent owner. He's done a really good job. Just a few odds and ends as far as local sports are concerned. I said you were talking about how you try to get out to as many games as possible. Obviously, it would be impossible for you to make all of them. So I guess you got to kind of get your info from. You probably have some intel out there, some people keeping an eye on things for you.
Yeah, there's a lot of great people on the Sun Coast too, sending me things, sending me scores. Obviously, if their kids are involved, they want me to try to get as much out as I can. But yeah, being a one-man department at SNN, we are spread thin sometimes, not really have as much time to get to as many games as we would like. Football obviously is huge for us. We try to cover that in all aspects every Friday night during football season. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Right now, I'm, like I said, grinding it out right now, but the work now hopefully will pay off a few years from now.
And right now, locally, baseball is a big thing, but they're also, second season spring football is kind of in bloom here around the area. And You're starting to get a little intel here and there about some of the teams and who's coming back, and a lot of coaching changes. We had mentioned a few episodes ago that there was a lot of changes locally, and keeping up with that must be sort of a task as well.
Yeah, definitely this offseason especially. A lot of coaching carousel. I mean, Bradenton Christian, I think, just got rid of one coach and is looking for another again, and they just hired that one a few weeks ago. So I think it's just a lot of turnover for whatever reason. Don't know the ins and outs just yet, but a lot of coaches coming and going, but still a lot of talent taking those positions as well, and a lot of talent on the rosters.
You talk to Coach Peacock when he's here. He'll tell you, I mean, the job is become it's a year-long thing, because there's just because of the way the sports evolved to being off-season training, and then you have spring football, and then you get into summer workouts and whatnot, and then actually, football season's right there, and you're kind of going again for the next year. And I think a lot of times it can be a wear-out process, because that's not their full-time job. In some places it is in high school, but here it's not, and so they have to maintain a full-time job and try to be the district champion in a very competitive area for high school football.
There's so much talent here, and there's so many winning teams, winning programs that may be struggling now but have so much history in the past, and a lot of those teams, like Venice, have been consistently good, so it's easy for us to obviously bring our coverage to Powell Davis and cover a lot of teams that are great, but Venice puts out winners in every aspect, every sport. But yeah, there's so many talent. I got here and I realized that there's 5 stars across the board, and every sport you got kids that are looking at big Division I schools. Coming from where I came from, if you had 1 or 2 of those kids come across your radar in terms of your coverage, it was a golden goose. Like, it was the best thing you could find. But coming here, it's like, I got to shuffle through a whole bank of these people. So it's really awesome what the Suncoast is churning out in terms of the talent.
Yeah, I know it is. Sometimes some nights you're watching, you're like, wow, the next guy. I have a son-in-law and a daughter who live out in Colorado who's a football coach out there, and my daughter's like, oh yeah, he played for our team, or he's watching college football games. It's like, oh my gosh, and then we watch it. We're like, we played against that guy. We played against that guy. Remember that guy? And so very much so, if you realize how much of the growth of talent is from this area is quite a bit. Indiana guy, you must be a big, that basketball must, I know that's the sport for you up in high school up there.
Absolutely, yeah. Follow all the basketball all the time, always in Indiana. So IU is the team, and then there's the other ones.
Yeah, whoever else is there.
There's
right.
Purdue, and
there's one year was Indiana State,
there,
like 1979.
yes.
That was a big deal. Talking about local baseball and softball are a hot sports right now. They're getting ready for their regional tournaments. Locally in baseball, 7A baseball, which is the top. I think that's the highest level for baseball. Sarasota is an 8th seed in the region. They're calling it the Quadrant 2, I think is what they're calling it. Against Plant High School up in Tampa, and then Lakewood Ranch coming out of the same district as the 4 seed facing Winter Haven. You got to see Sarasota play Venice, you said, just recently.
Yeah, my goodness. Both of those coaches are doing well. I mean, obviously, Sarasota had some great pitching. A lot of those games have been tightly contested. Not a lot of runs scored. I know the Venice just came up short the other night against Lakewood Ranch, 1-0, so pitching was obviously prominent there. Sarasota has got some great talent. I know Ben Swanger, one of the outfielders. It seemed, I watched the other night that game, in high school baseball, at least back in Kentucky, or at least what I've covered, you have 1 or 2 outfielders that obviously you can rely on to make plays and have, solid arms. I was watching that game. Sarasota, each 3 of their starting outfielders threw out somebody at second or third, seemingly every inning. It's like there was no for sure anything. You got a base hit, you lucky to stay on first. If you tried to push for 2, go for a double. It seemed like every outfielder that Sarasota had was throwing somebody out, hosing somebody at second base. So the talent that these like I said, the continuation of talent, even from football, basketball, to now to baseball season, it is ridiculous.
Well, Monty, you can attest to this. Being in Florida, you get to play your sport 12 months a year. So you're not, up in Indiana. I mean, it's basketball season, it's football season, it's baseball season. But here, it's baseball whenever you want, and that's why there's so many good players.
Oh, absolutely. In college, playing baseball and coming down here during spring break to play, all we got was a sunburn and our ass kicked. That was it. We hadn't been outside yet. So we were in a gym practicing and come down here and just get throttled.
No doubt. Continue on the baseball regional championships. Lemon Bay in the 4A classification, number 4 seed against Hardy. Lemon Bay's had a nice year this year. I mean, they've they won their district last week, and they've been, I guess, a little under the radar being out in Charlotte County. But they are the cream of the crop in Charlotte County. And I look for them to make a bit of a wave down there as far as the region is concerned. And then at 2A, ODA against Sefner Christian. And you check Max Preps every once in a while to see how the people tag them as far as the national rankings. ODA was one of the, if not the highest ranked team around, next to Sarasota. They might have been the highest ranked, and they have a talent as far as pitching is concerned as well. I know they've got some guys that they throw out there that can take any lineup down.
And they got a lot of guys too. Obviously, it's not the big D1 schools, the big powerhouse schools, but I think throughout their lineup and throughout their rotation, they got a lot of guys that are going to smaller Division Ones or huge Division II powers. A lot of NAIAs. So I mean, they got kids that obviously are going to play well and play now. The reason why they're in the playoffs, and they're also extending that into college. I mean, if we shouldn't shut off kids, obviously, that aren't going to play Division I schools. These kids are going to a lot of these baseball, especially the JUCO ranks and things like that, are huge programs. A lot of the athletic backgrounds of those schools are in baseball, huge. So a lot of these players on ODA, especially, I know that they're churning a lot of players out in college.
JUCO baseball in the state of Florida and even nationally is a huge deal. That's a huge deal. Getting into the softball regional finals, they got the 7A Region 2, Sarasota, the 3 seed, playing West Orange. 6A Region 2 as well. Number 4 Charlotte versus the 5 seed Land O'Lakes, and 4A Region 3 Lemon Bay, a 7 seed against a 2 seed Hardy, another local school. So representation across the board, and we wish all the schools in the area the best of luck. You'd like to see, the rivalries are great. School to school between these different sports, but locally we always want to see somebody do well, especially the team that beats you. You want to make sure, hey, they beat us, and so we're not just we're no slappy either. So we can see that stuff.
Just to jump in, so there's a association with Douglas and ODA.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Douglas's son, Jake, he goes to ODA.
See now this sunshine,
Go
money,
ODA.
money, everything you get. So yeah, we ODA, and again they've got the program up there. They do really well as far as their sports are. They got a pretty tight organization up there. All right, with that, we'll take our first break here for tonight. Come back and talk a little bit about what's going on around the state, and then of course lately that's been about the Tampa Bay Rays and how well they've been playing. So we'll take our quick break and come back and start a little state conversation. We'll see you back here shortly. Sports Zone and our second segment of the night, which is the state take as far as what's going on in the state, or what we feel we want to talk about what's going on with the state. And with that, John, it's very hard to pass over what the Tampa Bay Rays are doing right now. What's your take on how well they're playing and maybe why they're playing so well?
They're one of those teams year in and year out. You don't know. It's like a flip of a coin. You don't know if they're going to be competitive or if they're going to be middle of the road. But it seems like it always falls on the right side of the coin. They're always pushing somebody. They're always at the top of that division. And this year, if you would have told me at the beginning of the year, we talked about it earlier, I'm a Cardinals fan. If you would have told me the Cardinals are at the bottom of the division, the Pirates would be leading the division, and the Rays would be the class of the AL East, and everybody else would be falling behind at a rapid pace, I would have been shocked. But to see the Rays' performance, that's the high click that they are right now. The pitching staff's been great. I think the pitching staff is great, but
really
also
good.
the lineup has been ridiculous. I think team batting average is, over 270, I think, right now. So but you can't ask for much more than that. When Wander Franco's fielding infields and then flipping them to himself, doing all kinds of fun stuff, he's having a good time. I mean, they're doing something right.
And you watch them, they are having a great time. I mean, I know winning does propel that, but they are having a great time. With that, I'm going to kind of lead in. We had talked about it a couple weeks ago, but how much do you think the World Baseball Classic played into the Rays' hot hitting with a lot of their star players getting real heavy competition early in the year and maybe getting their bats warm and then getting that real momentum with a good feel coming out of the World Baseball Classic?
I think it can do nothing but help them. I mean, obviously people have their drawbacks when they look at the World Baseball Classic. I mean, there was a couple of players that went down with injury. Obviously, Edwin Diaz. You're
celebrating. Yeah, celebrating.
So, things like that probably draw the ire of some people. But, it can't help a batter. I mean, it has to help a batter when you're getting that much reps in early. Now, we'll see come, late summertime, the dog days, when if the Rays are still in the thick of it,
Right.
seeing how things turn out. But I love the World Baseball Classic. The atmosphere of that was great, and I think it's kind of spilled over a little bit into this year. A lot of the teams are playing at a high pace. The Rays have really fed off of that momentum.
I'm not a big soccer guy. I do keep an eye on it as far as
either.
internationally. I keep it like it's just kind of fun to watch. I think a little bit of what's going on with these documentaries with Wrexham or whatever it was, and then of course the Ted Lasso phenomenon that's going on. You I kind of keep an eye on it a little bit. But just the idea that the World Baseball Classic had a World Cup feel to it, with the way the cheering wasn't after a strike; it was nonstop from first pitch to last pitch, and that kind of lends itself to a better show for the audience or the people watching at home.
I mean, that's what Major League Baseball wants, is to have fans engaged. That's why they're making so many rule changes. They're trying to keep fans involved, shortening the length of the games, trying to get things more compressed so that excitement can be easily managed for a 2.5 hour period. So I think making these changes, seeing the influx of people, especially when it was making the rounds around the world and then coming to Miami for the final of the WBC, I think baseball's trending in the right direction. I'm kind of an old school guy, so at first I was like,
sure,
I don't know how I feel about all this stuff changing, and then the rowdiness of it all. But I mean, ho hum, I'll get over it. I'll figure it out. But I think now it's obviously trending in the right direction in baseball right now. I mean, it's never going to get to the point, I think, where it used to be, where it was America's pastime and everybody that was not anybody that was anybody, but a lot of people had eyes on baseball. So
Sure.
I think it's making its way back to that. And I think some of these rule changes are kind of helping facilitate
Yeah,
that.
you're 100% right. You said in your comments right there, 2 to 2.5 hour period of time. It was 4 hours.
Absolutely.
5 years ago. With everybody tightening their glove, touching their helmet, out of the box every time, grabbing dirt, just made it hard to watch. And then on top of that, with the bullpens as deep as they are, and one guy comes in for one batter and one guy's in for another batter, and then there's just nonstop. You get to the sixth inning, and let's say you got there in an hour and a half. It was another hour and a half to 2 hours to get the last 3 innings in because of all the changes and what was going on. So it kind of lends itself from a potentially exciting situation to a very sort of like, I'll check it out a half an hour from now and dip into something else on TV.
I mean, there was those subtle nuances that a lot of players had, their routines and stuff. The little, maybe unstrap and restrap my bat and glove 6 times. I mean, check the wind, do whatever I got to do before I get in, even if you're playing in the trop when it's indoors.
Correct.
But and I want to make it clear that I was fine with the 4 hours. That was fine because I love baseball, so I was fine with that. So I don't want anybody coming for me or anything like that. But, I mean, it can only make things better when it's shorter. I mean, there's only so many hours in a day. It's been 24 hours a day for as long as I've ever known it to be. So
yeah,
I mean, I think it's going to be a good thing moving forward.
I think so too. And I said, and again, locally, as far as the Rays, I think what you see this type of a team, the fun they're having. I've always tried to develop that core fan base. Obviously Cardinals fan. I had my affiliations back in the day. Everybody comes down and moves down here with the team in their pocket and trying to get that to change over, and that's really appealing to the younger generation. And so I think now you're starting to see where if the Rays continue to play this way and they can market this sort of enthusiasm that they've had, you're going to see that core audience, and you're going to see that eventually you're going to start to see those season tickets being sold at a much higher rate.
And I think hopefully you'll see that in the new stadium eventually. I know that's kind of plans are preliminary and they've drawn out stuff, and they got ideas. I mean, there's hopes for everybody across the board. Oh, we want to do this, we want to do that. But I think it's trending in that way for the Rays. And like I said, they're just one of those teams that are always in it. They may have a few week stretch where they're like, okay, they're done, or they may have a few week stretch like this team's going to win the World Series. And I think obviously this past week with the series with the Pirates was pretty cool to see both of them at the top of their game. And the Rays really step all over the Pirates. So there's something about them and Kevin Cash, how he coaches them up and how they play, that they're one of those teams you can't ever really count out, even if they do start losing some pieces, because the Rays are one of those organizations and farm systems that they bring somebody from Timbuktu that's out of nowhere that's just going to blow the socks off people, and I think that they're going to continue that. I mean, even in a crowded American League, even though the AL East is kind of weaker with Toronto and New York, and but Baltimore's still playing well this year too. So I think they're gonna be in that for the long haul. It depends on how their pitching can play out.
Well, you figure how well they are pitching right now, and maybe within the next couple of weeks get Tyler Glasnow coming back, who is a Cy Young potential kind of guy, and you start adding those pieces back into it. And if the lineup can stay as hot as it's been, and I think they will, because I mean you have a bona fide MVP or 2 MVP candidates right now with Randy Rosarina and Wander Franco, and Franco is a long-term signee. You've got him you got him on a Evan Longoria like contract. you're not giving him the house right now, but he has this escalated sort of salary base, and he'll be a free agent when he's probably 30 or whatever it could be. So he has a chance to really cash in on his opportunities then. But they are like. No, everybody wants to watch those guys, and it's a big deal for the race to get that national attention with those kind of players.
And Arozarena is one of those guys that's hard to watch for me play and be successful because he's a former Cardinal, and we just kind of gave him away for peanuts. So, but it's one of those things. But I think I watched a few episodes ago. You guys, was it Josh Grant that was on that said Arozarena could win the MVP? I think that's fantastic. I think he's got this tool set to where he can do that. I think Wander can do that eventually as well. But like I said, they're one of those teams that even if they didn't have those guys playing at a high click, playing really well, as long as they had 5 or 6 playing decent, for whatever reason, they just have some kind of mojo about them that they still play pretty well across the board.
Even for as hot as they are, they're still timely hitters. They have always been timely hitters when their batting averages were a little lower, so that's even better. Arozarena, when Josh did say that, I remember, I'm like, yeah, you know what? That the World Series 2 years ago, he was killing it, and he was, on a path that was a different level for a guy to play in the World Series. So he has that. You saw the potential for it, and now you're starting to see it come to play with his consistency, but not only at the bat or in the field as well. He's a great outfielder as well.
In that same vein where I was saying, they don't really have that star guy that's really like picking up the pieces and leading them to the next steps. With Wander and Arozarena, those are two guys that can obviously develop into that. With Randy being a huge of a presence as he is, just with the fans alone, obviously in left, he has this crazy fans out there in left. He's pretty much daily like meme material, doing something crazy after so he's got one of those, it's almost a pop culture following that he's building. And Wander was a huge prospect, and he's maybe not reached that full potential just yet, but he's super young. So both of those guys I think could be household names for the Rays and in baseball in general, especially for the Latin American community. WBC, that obviously helps build that too.
And that's the part too, that not only are they going to market themselves through social media or whatever, YouTube or whatever it may be, right? They're marketing themselves to the American audience, but to their own cultural audiences as well. And there's a lot of money to be made, and they know it. And so it makes a lot of sense. Even the way that they sort of have celebrated that they've lended itself to what they're used to doing, and I think it works well. I think the Rays are letting it happen and say, hey, do your celebration the way you want to, do it the way it is, and fly your colors, for your country or whatever it may be. And I think that lends itself to not only bringing more fans to them, but also putting more money in their pockets.
And I think the Rays know what they're doing too, because they locked up Franco for a long time, and I think on what will eventually be a pretty financially look back upon pretty steady deal, nothing that's too crazy in terms of money. And I think they're going to be, relatively happy with the fact that they locked him up at that price point. But Randy, I think will eventually, I'm not sure of his contract status, but I think he'll eventually get his money somewhere. That's one thing about the Rays that is kind of a downfall. It's a rarity that they do spend that much money.
Right.
So for them to lock Franco in for that long, and then Arozarena, I think talks are there. We'll see what happens. But if they want to do the right thing and keep the fans there, especially with the idea of moving to a new stadium, trying to build upon the Rays franchise, because there's so many people in Major League Baseball when it comes to the stadiums that just absolutely hate Tropicana Field. Think it's the worst stadium. I've seen the reports of, it's the worst stadium in baseball. I appreciate it going there because I can go in there and not sweat the entire time I'm there.
Absolutely,
but
man.
I think if they want to trend in the right direction, they'll make sure to lock up the guys. They'll spend the money needed, and I think if they have to, they'll overspend if it's necessary.
I think you're right. I think this build-up right now, as far as that, I think the Rays have a depth chart that probably goes 11 deep at each position. Whoever's playing A ball, they know who's coming up the pipe, where they can spend money, where they need to spend money. But I think what they'd love to see happen is all this success. The Franco being at his peak would be at the time where a new stadium was being built or was being finished at that point, where they could be like, wow, we're coming in, and here comes this grand opening kind of scenario where you've got the best team in baseball, or maybe the best player or two in baseball, and it's the thing to do, and it's a covered stadium, let's say, and with all the amenities you want. And then you say, well, why that franchise you bought for maybe pennies on the dollar back in the day is now one of those, one of those Glazer-esque purchases, like when they bought Man U after barely being able to afford the Buccaneers 10 years earlier. So I think they're looking for the same return on their investment.
They're not going to compete with the Yankees in terms of payroll. They're not going to compete with any of those teams. But to see them being as successful as they are this year and in years past with the payroll that they do have, and seeing the Yankees struggle in that same vein with the much money as they're spending, it really goes to show. You could pay a guy a certain amount of money. You can pay him a certain amount of money that's much less than that. But the money you get paid isn't how you perform. just because I pay you so much, obviously you're expected to play more, but that guy still has to go out on the field and do something about that. He has to go out there and pretty much cash in on himself. So to see these players from the Yankees, guys like Judge and Stanton and all these guys, some of the pitchers that have come in, they're starting off at such a poor rate. The Rays got to be sitting back and smiling, thinking, I'm paying my guys half of what you're paying your guys, and we're only got 7 losses on the season.
Right, no doubt. Quick turn into something a little different, maybe something I know you attended, the Dick Vitale Gala. It's for pediatric cancer, which obviously Dick just got over. He's fully recovered, I think, at this point now, or in remission from his cancer battle. Tell us what it's like. I mean, if you're not everybody familiar with it, Dick Vitale has been heavily involved with cancer research since the Jimmy V day. Jimmy Valvano, good friend Dick Vitale's, and helped him fight cancer as long as he could help him, and then carried that torch for him for a lot of years. And locally, he does a gala every year, and you had a good fortune to get to go there at least twice, you said now.
Yeah, second year in a row for me and S&M. We do a lot of partnership with the V Foundation, obviously with Dickie V2, living locally in Lakewood Ranch. So he's a great guy, obviously the personality that he is and the face of college basketball, a former coach, former analyst, or current analyst, and he just churns out so many good things about him in terms of the people that he comes across and the person that he is. And the gala is something that I've grown to love each and every year that I've got to cover these last 2. You have faces come in. Last year, you had fantastic guys. This year, you have David Robinson, Buster Posey, the McEnroe brothers. You have Derek Wittenberg, Rick Barnes. So getting to talk to those guys in the lead up to the event while they're doing their press conferences, enjoying a cocktail here and there, it's cool. Because growing up, I never thought that. I mean, obviously, I want to be on a big stage, just talk to these big faces. So getting the opportunity to do it here, it's pretty cool. And they raised $12.4 million last night, or excuse me, on Friday over the weekend. $12.4 million, which is a record for them, coming off $11 million last year. So, and the V Foundation having been around for 30 years, and this is the 18th annual gala. They're breaking records every year, and I know Dickie V's loving it.
And I'll tell you, like you said, the fact that you're meeting these legendary kind of athletes and celebrities in some way in an intimate session. And you're not walking up to the microphone in your hand. You're like, hey, I'm John. Nice to meet you. And they're like, hey, I'm Derek, or I'm whoever. It's like it's kind of cool to kind of actually have a normal conversation with a pro athlete who's there for a really great reason.
And like I said, you don't want to be starstruck in a sense, but you are. Sure. I mean, obviously, I wasn't a huge tennis guy, but I knew of John McEnroe just because of obviously the background of the outbursts and the crazy personality that he has.
Hair, the whole deal.
How
right?
he gave it to umpires back in the day, and then he's in Adam Sandler movies and he's making music and stuff. So getting to talk to him and getting to ask him about his relationship with Dick Vitale, how they're both so off the page, incredible, enthusiastic people, and then asking him about Nick Bollettieri and the IMG Academy, having all those tie-ins, but then to finish up the conversation and ask him how much or why does he hate pickleball so much, things like that. Even though he played pickleball a month ago, he says that pickleball takes the athleticism out of what tennis built, and so getting to chat with him about some serious stuff and then dwindle off into like silliness, tennis versus pickleball rivalry was pretty cool, and then Buster Posey asking him about the new rules of baseball, how he would have liked them and interpreted them as a catcher from their perspective, and how his lower body would have been a little bit more aided if he had some lesser games to play or shorter games, I might add. And it's just cool. Seeing, like you said, they walk over there. They've done media their entire life throughout their career, even post-career, and getting to come over there and shake their hands. If it's David Robinson and I have to get on a step stool and shake his hand, it's pretty cool seeing those guys in that setting. And then they're total professionals for the 2.5, 3 minutes we talk, and then right after it's thank you for your time, I appreciate it, and they're on their way. But I never thought I'd be doing something like that at this point. So getting to have that relationship, and Dickie V's been great to me. Obviously, I mean, growing up, if you would have told me I had Dickie V's phone number, and I could text him, call him, and ask him about stuff. A kid from Kentucky, where the bluegrass basketball is huge. UK, you have I obviously don't like Louisville that much, but UK, and then growing up in Western Kentucky too, like, having Dick Vitale as a contact in my phone is a dream. So that's pretty awesome.
And him being a local guy, a national with national ties. You said the voice of college basketball for years and years and years. But I have just briefly seeing him in certain places. One time I walked into a very, very uncrowded Carrabba's, and I was walking past this table. And I just kind of caught his eye, and he caught my eye, and he said hello, and I said, hey Dick, nice to see you. He said, oh, thanks, and he engaged me
just another guy
for 20 seconds. And it was really cool. And I've seen him in other situations. Years gone back, probably '09, high school football game was Venice versus Manatee. Big deal. Trey Burton was a senior as a whole. And we went to the game. Venice won. And then Dick Vitale did a segment with Mike and Mike in the morning on ESPN Radio. And started listening to that morning. And all of a sudden he says, my big take from the weekend is he started talking about the high school football game and talking about the local kids and everything else. He really gets it, and not only gets it, but enjoys it. He's a sports fan, or the love of the game really permeates from the lower levels up. And when you see that it comes across as genuine on screen, and when he talks about the game, that's not a made-up situation. He is thoroughly engrossed and enjoys all sports at every level.
And he doesn't do anything half-heartedly.
No.
I mean, he fought melanoma, he fought lymphoma, beat both of them, obviously fought with some vocal stuff, but he's still pushing to raise record money for pediatric cancer research. And I sit here and tell you the same thing about, talking to David Robinson and Buster Posey and all these great legends. Rick Pitino coming by, which that was cool. I mean, Kentucky legend.
Yeah, no doubt.
But seeing those guys come by and stroll through, and Dick knows each and every single one of them because they cross path in whatever sport, because every sport is like a melting pot there. It doesn't matter what you play. They somehow have some kind of connection to him. But the coolest thing about it is that I think they had 18 that he calls his courageous kids that have dealt with pediatric cancer in some way. And he would sit there and name off every single one of them, who they are, what they've gone through by name, all 18 of them in a row. And he was just as passionate about speaking about those kids and what they've gone through as much as he was talking about, the Admiral scoring so many points, winning NBA championships. Those kids are that's like his passion right now. And that was one of the more cool interviews I got to do too, was a young man named Enzo, had been cancer-free for 7 years and was diagnosed at the age of 4, and took him 3 or 4 years to get through it. And as cool as it was to talk to these legends and, faces of their game, talking to these kids, the reason why we're there was as moving as anything. And obviously having the courage to get up there, and even though he was nervous, to talk to me on camera, which I'm nobody in his eyes, having, had breakfast with Dick Vitale that morning, but I have a camera, so for whatever reason, he's nervous. But it's cool having him tell their story, and then to see that kid who's fought cancer be, impassioned by what Dickie V has done to now want to help him in that fight as well. And so that was cool, having kids like that come up and be like, let me tell you my story about how I fought cancer, and I'm only 13 years old. I'm 26, and seeing these kids speak so fluently about what they've gone through and speaking so passionately about helping kids, it was awesome.
No, and it kind of gives you the true motivation as to what's important. And you look at that and you're like, wow, that is pretty cool and pretty important. And to see guys that have reached the pinnacle of their careers in athletics or in broadcasting to be that grounded enough to know what's right and to do the right thing, it's an amazing opportunity to see that stuff. So I'm glad you gave us a little insight into that.
Yeah.
By the way, everybody, we didn't throw Monty off the set.
I know he said the Cubs thing. I had to be like, hey, okay.
He was done. No, but Monty was just here for a short little while, and we do appreciate him being here with us earlier. With that, we'll take our second break of the night and come back and talk a little bit about the national scene, a little Kentucky Derby, maybe a little NBA and NHL playoffs. So with that, we'll take our next break and be back here shortly at Douglas Jeep with the 941 Sports.
It's the amazing sales event at Douglas Jeep Chrysler Dodge Ram, and these may be the best deals you've seen all year. It's Jeep season, so drive a new Jeep Compass from only $329 per month, or a new Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo 4x4 from $329 per month. It's Ram season, so get behind the wheel of a new Ram 1500 Quad Cab from only $319 per month. Don't miss the amazing sales event going on now at Douglas Jeep Chrysler Dodge Ram in Venice. Who has amazing savings? Douglas does!
Welcome back to 941 Sports Zone here with SNN Sports Director John Reynolds. And John, nationally, and I guess this is a little close to your heart, the Kentucky Derby was this past weekend. Got to see a whole heck of a lot of what goes on before, during, and after the Derby this year with the coverage by NBC Sports. But once again, it really kicks off that Triple Crown series, and the results were the 8-horse Mage. Am I saying it right? Mage?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was the winner. A very, very underused horse. I guess maybe it was like the 4th or 5th race that the horse had been in, trying, I guess, to protect the horse from getting too beat up. But we saw, unfortunately, some real bad incidents as far as injuries on the track with some horses, which, again, it is a part of racing. You see it all the time. You've seen championship horses go down in races, and it's just a sad thing to see. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast. But your experience with the Derby this year or in the past? What's your take on it?
I mean, unfortunately, my Kentucky card's going to get revoked. I've never been to the Derby. Obviously, growing up at school, it was like almost ritual. We would pick horses or whatever we were doing in math class or social studies, whatever you were doing, you'd stop and you'd watch it. If obviously it was going on or preliminary races were being streamed or whatever. But like, it's almost ritualistic for people now. Obviously, you get dressed up in the garb, you have the mint julep, you do your thing, and obviously now it's gotten so huge across the board that celebrities from all walks of life are going. And I've never went. Hopefully, I'll get there one day. But it's like Kentucky basketball. Obviously, bourbon in Kentucky is huge, and the horse racing is awesome there as well. And I know the favorite went out right before, and that was a huge talking point for people. So I got to watch the race, obviously, but it's gotten so huge now. It's a 2-minute race, but then there's hours of coverage before this 2-minute like craziness, and it's pretty cool.
We talked about how much money is actually bet on the race. It was the year prior. It was $233 million was bet on the race. But it's become a nationwide sort of, hey, get your chance to see if you can get lucky enough to pick the right number or however you go about doing it. But the Derby itself, the number of entrants in the Derby, I don't know. I'm not a horse racing aficionado, but I got to think that many horses in a field, I think it kind of makes the product a little diluted because the favorite could get squeezed out and never get back in the race. It's only 2 minutes, and if you're not outright or you get kind of bumped one way or the other, really, I'm not sure it showcases maybe the best horses sometimes.
And you can almost get lost in it too. And I think about it in retrospect, talking about basketball and baseball and football and all these major sports. You watch the pre-coverage of the Derby, and they're like talking the statistics of what stall you're in, or if you're closer to the rail, if you're further away from the rail, the distance around the track. And I'm like, is this what I sound like when I'm talking about stats and sports? I'm like, this is horse racing. Just open the gates, let them run.
Let 'em go.
I'm like, what are we talking about? But and then like it's only a certain age group of horses can race in this race, so it's almost like a one and done in basketball. It's a one and done for this race for some horses, and I don't know. It's gotten to be such a huge deal now that it's almost, like I said, ritualistic. It's like exploded across mainstream culture. I mean, it's cool to see all those people come to Kentucky, but it's also like, hey, Kentucky's been around for other things too, like come to a UK game or something. But I don't know, it's pretty cool. I didn't have a horse in the running, but didn't have anybody I was worried about. I think I put out a tweet right before the race started. I'm pulling for 2 fills. It was like a cool horse. Yeah. Came in second.
Somebody else said a friend of mine did the same thing. They liked the name 2 Phils, and it worked out pretty well. That was pretty good. We actually made a prediction. I must talk about the prediction. We just picked. We were looking up the horses that won the most from whatever gate they came out of. 5, 11, 13 is the numbers we picked, and nothing else. So our predictions were not happening. And also my prediction with Venice High School in the district didn't turn out either. Coach Peacock did one of those lingerers. So he's got the Lakers in 7, so we'll see how that works.
See, if you would have watched the pre-race coverage, you would have known 5, 11, and 13 aren't good spots to win from.
If we would have watched all 6 hours of it, yes, we'll see about that for sure. Kentucky Derby, Daytona 500, Indianapolis 500, maybe even the ball dropping in Times Square, like those kind of things where it's like, why are we here? We're just here because it's the thing to do or where we need to be and have some fun with it. And so. And I think a little bit, that the Derby is trying to sort of revitalize the horse racing industry in particular. I think it's been on the down slope for a little bit. Internationally, though, I mean, Japanese horses and Venezuelan horses and all that, it's becoming a big thing internationally now where they're just not all coming out of those stakes races all over the country. They're coming out of Dubai and all these other places and bringing horses into play, race at the Derby.
And, I mean, it's also name value, too. Like, people are flipping on the Derby and they don't have a horse in the running per se, and they're seeing Patrick Mahomes telling people to take to their horse, telling the jockeys to come to the horses, and then you look at the people that are owning the horses. I think the horse that won has they gave out stakes to that horse for just pretty much anybody. Like I think there's a reporter I used to work with in Bowling Green. She's like, my aunt and uncle own a stake in this horse.
385, yeah.
So it's like it's letting the common people buy the horses and being part of the horsing game. And then I watch NFL, keep up with obviously the Pat McAfee show and things like that. Yeah. Ian Rappaport this morning, he had an ownership stake in one of the horses. So it's like you have these people that in certain sports that are involved with this. You see the red carpets, and it's the Randy Travises and the Bobby Flays. I mean, there's not just sports people there.
I did Bobby Flay, and then I know Jim Rome had some horses before. So I know it's a thing that it's an investment. And sometimes it's not a big investment. You can say, we're going to get this horse. It's the 4th generation from this horse, and we need $20,000. And, okay, I'll get in on it. And there you go. And next thing you know, you could be in the midst of a champion, and you never know how lucky you can be in those situations.
Anyway, you can get more eyeballs on a product. I mean, more power to you.
Absolutely. Real quick, also talk about the NBA, NHL playoffs. NHL first. I mean, the big names, as far as the big names are concerned, as far as this year, with the Bruins going down to the Panthers in the first round, the President's Cup, what we call it, the jinx, I guess it would be, getting knocked out in the first round. Then you've got the Avalanche, the defending champions, being knocked out by the Kraken. I believe the Kraken is the ones who got them. And then you have the Lightning, and again, they're in the finals for 3 years in a row, getting knocked out by the Maple Leafs. But I mean, NHL playoffs, it's probably the most grueling professional playoff that you can be in. I mean, it's the physicality, it's the travel, it's the everything that goes into it, the intensity. I mean, any sport where you're basically allowed to fist fight each other, it's going to be a tough thing. And then when it gets right down to it, that's kind of how momentum gets changed. And so far, it looks like it's going to be obviously a new champion and somebody that may even be way off the radar from the beginning of the year.
And I said earlier, I'm not a huge hockey guy, but I've learned to enjoy it and appreciate it for what it is. I've been to one hockey game, went to Emily last year. Got this. It's funny or not, I sat next to Sidney Crosby in the press box. He came
nice.
Up. They were playing the Penguins, I think, last year, opening the year, and turned over, and I think he was hurt to start the year. And I looked over, and I'm like, Sidney Crosby. Don't know much about hockey, but I know who that is.
I know that guy.
But yeah, seeing a lot of these. I mean, obviously Boston, you don't win anything in the regular season doesn't prove anything after the play. Like once you get in the playoffs, you're 0-0, fresh slate, and it just didn't work out. Yeah, you're the greatest regular season team of all time, but I don't know how many people are going to hang up a regular season banner. So not that team, because they were sort of, I mean, they were a veteran team, and maybe the 82 game push to be that good could have been a wearing out process. I'm sure they'll be trying to figure it out for months and months and months. But it was a tough road. But so we'll see the NHL playoffs continuing. I do like the coverage though on TV. They're getting a TNT, TBS. They're all over the place. So more opportunities to see the different teams, and that might as well bring a little more eyes to the prize as far as the NHL is concerned. NBA playoffs, a little more mainstream, I guess. But you've got some matchups that are really cool if you're an old-time fan as well. Sixers, Celtics. Obviously, you're a Celtics fan. You got something interested in that one. Knicks, Heat, which goes back to the 90s where they were, a big tussle with them over the years. And you've got what I would call them more the new age sort of team right now with the Nuggets and the Suns, which may be the Nuggets may be the best team. It's just there's just a team that's under the radar, got the two-time MVP on the team that nobody even knows. And that's been a pretty good tussle with them. And then maybe the marquee matchup of all, which is the Lakers and the Warriors, and that being with the LeBron versus Steph Curry, matchup. With that, any one particular series outside the Celtics 76ers you're interested in, or are you just looking at the other one like we all look at this with the Lakers and the Warriors right now? I like the Nuggets and Suns series. I think it's pretty cool seeing how Durant, and obviously I'm a UK guy, or went to Western, but obviously a UK fan, so seeing Devin Booker, knock off the Jordan record the other night of 47 points, and it's pretty cool seeing those guys. And Jokic has just got one of those games. Like I said, I'm old school in baseball. I'm old school in terms of basketball as well, and Jokic is one of those guys
that
would have fit in. And seemingly 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I feel like he would have fit the mold of any of those players. And I know last night was a little contentious. So that was fun
with the owner. Yeah, no doubt.
He's also a big friend of Dick Vitale, so I may have to text Dick about that.
Gotcha.
But seeing the obviously Sixers Celtics, I do have the vested interest there. That one's going to be a fun one to watch. But the Nuggets and Suns is fun because I know that a lot of the talk is about LeBron versus Steph, and I think both of those teams are great. But I think for whatever reason, gravitating to the Suns and Nuggets, I think one of those two teams is the one that's going to make it to the finals.
I agree.
So I know that, especially from a media standpoint, it's LeBron and Steph, Warriors, Lakers. But Suns and Nuggets, I think, is where the person that's going to be standing tall in terms of the Western Conference.
I totally agree because they're the more complete teams. They're going so if you watch the game, just for example, a little bit last night, I think it was last night or the night before, I can't remember, but you watched it and both teams played absolutely atrocious for a while and then went on these streaky sort of runs where they got hot and eventually the Lakers came out on top. But that's not going to work against the Nuggets. That's not going to work against the Suns. They across the board, they're solid players. They don't have these sort of big ups and downs. I think that a team like the Nuggets in particular, they'll jam up LeBron. Not that now LeBron's a great player. Don't get me wrong, but they're built to be that solid base, that team that is due to win, and they're probably been seasoned enough. They did kind of fall on their faces a few years in the playoffs, but I think right now, being under the radar, letting all that stuff kind of happen on the side, I think it's good for them. I think they'll come out, and I think they'll be beyond motivated to come out of the Western Conference.
And I think both of those teams are probably fine with that, flying under the radar.
Sure.
So I think the lack of media coverage and the lack of, probably all around appreciation for both of those teams and their rosters and the coaching, especially. The coaching's been crazy good for both of those teams. So everybody's going to have their eyes on LeBron and Steph for sure, but I think Jokic is one of those generational guys, obviously two-time MVP. And then Durant, obviously one of the greatest players in the world. Booker's coming into his own. Chris Paul has had a steady career, finally, still looking in the hunt for his first championship. I think only thing that could be the detriment of the Nuggets is down the stretch. I don't know if Jokic is going to hold up, I think, but that team is going to have to the depth is there, but I think guys like Murray and Gordon are going to have to keep the foot on the gas. So I do think the Nuggets, this is probably early for predictions, but I think they'll make it to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with that for sure. A little bit about LeBron and Steph. Obviously there's been a conversation regarding their legacies or legend or whatever you want to call it. And Steph with the 4 titles, and obviously he's revolutionized the game with the 90-foot jump shots and everything else that he does with his game. And of course, LeBron being just he's the most physically gifted basketball player of all time. I'll give him that number 1 because nobody's ever going to give him the Jordan number 1. But they really don't have a rivalry against each other. I think they kind of get along. You watch them on the court; they're just kind of 2 guys playing, and they don't really have an issue with each other, so to speak. But what's your take on both of them? Do you see them as comparable, or do you see them as just 2 great players playing in the same generation or the same time?
And I can't think of off the top of my head, but I don't know how many championships does LeBron have?
I think he had 2 in Miami,
okay,
1 in Cleveland. I think that's it.
I think because Steph wins another one, he's at 5.
He's at 5.
I tell you what, if Stephen Curry can make it to the finals and they make another run at the championship and he has 5, I think he takes another step in terms of not over LeBron per se, but I think he's in that conversation, not for greatest of all time, but in terms of one of the best ones to ever play the game. And I think he obviously has revolutionized the way the game's played now in terms of, 3-point shots. And then, some of the shots he puts up, you can even talk into consideration of bringing a 4-point realm out if they ever wanted to do that.
No, you could.
So I think obviously LeBron, in terms of history, will probably go down as one of the greatest ever play. Obviously, I'm a Jordan guy too. I also lean Larry Bird a little bit. Growing up hearing stories from my father and seeing highlights and things like that. But LeBron is who he is. He has all the respect in the world. Not one of my absolute favorites. I'm not going to throw my hat in the ring for him there. But I think Steph, if he can win 5, I think he's going to be in that conversation. Not for just a great shooter, a great facilitator, one of the greatest players to ever play this game. I think he's going to have a legacy that can just be not as comparable as LeBron, but it'll be in that conversation.
When you watch a Warriors game, okay, obviously the shooting, there's been times where it's just amazing. I haven't seen that much reaction to a player shoot a jump shot that you do when he gets on a roll. It's just unbelievable how people just get so thrilled by that. But when you watch his game, he is tireless. He plays on both sides of the ball. He's not just a standing off in the distance, pass me the ball guy. He is penetrating. He's finger rolls and little teardrop shots, and he's all these different things. He is nonstop, constantly playing. He is the spark plug to that team, as well as being the superstar of the team. A lot of times you always got a guy like that comes off the bench, and he goes and gives you 20 hard minutes. Man, Steph's giving you 40 hard minutes easily. He really goes at it.
It's a coach's dream. He never hardly comes out of the game, and when he's in the game, he's 100% all the time. He's a coach that tells a player, I grew up playing high school basketball, you never stop moving. He's one of those guys that's just got one of those ticks about him. He's always doing something. He's always got his hands in something. He's moving around off screens. He's getting people open. He's finding himself getting open, finding players that are open. He's one of those guys that coaches probably would love to have every single one of their players play like. And from a physicality standpoint, he's not the biggest guy.
No.
He's not the strongest guy. But just like the Bruins not winning in the regular season and not winning anything in the playoffs, it doesn't matter how big or strong he is. He is who he is. He's a revolutionary kind of player, and he's got a game about him, and just the way he operates and the way I think a lot of it's mental too. I think he approaches the game from a very regimented mindset. I mean, his pregame is the same all the time, which all those guys, they're going to be that way. But I think he just approaches the game he's just on another level than other people.
I agree, and I think the probably the comparison or the how you look at it from a different perspective, LeBron's greatness is in his physicality.
Yeah.
Steph's greatness is in his basketball acumen. I mean, LeBron is obviously he's a great basketball player, but he's 6'9", playing probably playing a 6'2" kind of game in a 6'9" body where he can kind of bully his way and get fouled, and he can jump over people and all these other things. Which I mean, it's no fault to him. He's just a physical specimen. But Steph's the guy that says everybody looks and says, I could kind of do that if I tried.
Right.
And you see guys who now are saying, I know I can't do what LeBron does, but I can't if I really work at it, I can do what Steph stuff. I think that's the transition we're seeing. That players are like, no, I can't be like him or I can't be like Mike, but I can be like Steph. And that's kind of how I think I see it.
And I think especially for this series too, you have to see the Lakers kind of take that next step too in terms of Anthony Davis was a monster in Kentucky. He obviously needs to take, for whatever reason, he hasn't fully reached that potential in the NBA yet, which is kind of worrisome to me. And the injuries have been what they have been for him. But I think the Lakers, LeBron's not going to be the LeBron of 10 years ago. He's not going to be the Miami LeBron. He's not even going to be the Cleveland LeBron. He's not the most latest edition of Cleveland, I should say. He's just not physically. I mean, time gets the best of everybody. So I think Davis is getting older. He's hampered by injuries. I mean, they have some depth, but nothing crazy. So I think that after this year especially, if they don't make a deeper run than what they are now, they're going to have to probably fix some things.
They're going to blow it up. Bronny's going to get drafted somewhere, and LeBron's going to go play with him.
He's staying close to home. Bronny's going to USC. So
big thing for them. And he had a nice NIL deal, TR saw. So
that doesn't hurt either.
Yeah, no doubt. With that, we'll take our next break, or our final break of the night, and come back and do our What's Bugging Me segment and make some predictions for what's coming up maybe this week or in the future. With that, we'll see you back here shortly at the 941 Sports Zone at Douglas Gym. Zone here with John Reynolds, sports director, SNN. And so, John, this is sort of our little fun final segment where we get to talk about what's bugging us and some predictions as well. So if you got something what's bugging you, I'll let you go ahead and go first.
All right. We were talking about it earlier. Obviously, I was at the Dick Vitale Gala. What's bugging me is these autograph hounds in the world of sports. I don't get it. I mean, I grew up loving sports, loving the personalities that were in the sports that I watched. Obviously, memorabilia, autographs, game use stuff is awesome. I'm not telling anybody to not do that. There's a time and a place to get an autograph, though. I was at Dick Vitale's Gala, walk into the Ritz-Carlton. I told you earlier, you feel like you have to act and look a certain way just to even get in the door there. Obviously, I was dressed up for, live interviews, and come around the corner, and I see David Robinson sticks out, 7'1". I'm like, oh, that's awesome. He's kind of fiddling with something in his hand, writing something out. I'm like, oh, he's either notes for a speech he's going to have to say later, or maybe he's signing something that they're going to auction off, because I think they auctioned off quite a bit of stuff. And I turn around and see this guy and a line of people, and it's just people that showed up, drove to Sarasota, and I think one of the guys was from Michigan, had drove to Sarasota just because he knew this was going to happen, was going to hang out in the lobby and just hounding people for autographs. I don't get it. I think there's a time and a place for that. And maybe if you show up for one thing and you have one item like we talked about, but if you show up with 15 things and you want to get one for yourself and then you're going to sell the other 14, I don't know. I think that's just lowly. I'm not trying to down anybody that does that, but I just think that's horrible. Like, especially when you were talking about even like if you have a child or something and like, oh, I'm going to send my cute kid with a David Robinson jersey on to the front so he can sign a basketball for my cute kid. It's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong in that.
No, and I think it's sort of I think a lot of guys or people who do that aren't really sports fans. they just seen an opportunity to sort of get into something that's got some potential for making money. At a Rays game years ago, my daughters were, they know baseball very much, but it was Sunday, and you get the players come over and sign balls or whatever, and they're sort of waiting in line, and then you watch the couple of, let's say 13-year-old kids or whatever, go to the line, get a ball signed, and then come back in the line again and get another ball signed. And then the players were like, I mean, they didn't even argue with the kids, but they're like, the kid walked up and they're like, no, I signed a ball for you. They did this, and they know that back 20 rows up is dad saying, go get as many as you can. They won't say no to you. And now these players are savvy enough to say, hey kid, I've already signed one for you.
Right.
Let's get that little girl over there who's been waiting or whatever else may be. And then what happens is when they get shut down, who's the first one to get mad? The guy 20 rows up, like, oh, that guy's a jerk. But you're still going to sell his ball that you got, you know. So it does have a very sort of odd feeling to it, especially being a sports fan. You're like, yeah, is that really what I want? Is that really how I want to go about it? I couldn't do it.
When it's good for players to be like, I signed one for you, maybe next time. Because, put it like this. I mean, you get a paycheck at your job. You like the paycheck you get. You don't immediately go to your boss's office, be like, can I have another one of these?
Right.
You're not going to be. You have to obviously wait a certain amount of time, put the work in to get that next check. I'm not saying you have to wait a certain time to get your next autograph, but just be cognizant and aware that these are people too. We spoke about it. We're both wrestling fans, and there's notions of videos that I've seen of showing up at airports, and these fans have a slate of 20 things for wrestlers to sign, and I don't know what they're getting paid for their merchandise sales, but if they sign 20 things for you, I'm fairly 100%. Probably more than 100% certain a lot of that money is not coming back to them because you're selling it on your own eBay and your own whatever. So it's like, if they sign one thing for you, that's great. But my memorabilia is making those memories, shaking the hand of the person I'm talking to, or getting a memory as much as a memorabilia. So that's bugging me, and it's been bugging me.
Right, I totally agree. Nope, that's a great one right there. What's bugging me tonight is, we kind of talked a little, I kind of hinted around about it, but the length of time that are spent on pre-game shows leading up to some of the bigger sporting events, 6-hour pre-game for the Kentucky Derby. Well, now we can say it's a 2-minute race. I know there's a lot going on there, really cool situation as far as the parties and all the different amenities. It's nice to see it, but 6 hours is a lot. And so I think that from a sports fan, I mean, an adamant sports fan, obviously, to sit there and even dream I could sit there for 6 hours, there's no way you can do it. Going backwards, Super Bowl is the same way. You've got long pre-games for every big event, and really I don't know what else they're bringing to the table in that long of a pre-game show. I remember when pre-game shows were a half an hour or an hour. Now NFL, you've got the pre-game to the pre-game on CBS Sports Network, and then it goes to this one, it goes to that one. All the cable networks have to have 3-hour pregame shows, and again, I get it. You have 19 people on the panel because who can talk, for that long about the games that day. Just getting too much, and I know it has a lot to do with advertising, has a lot to do with getting more sponsors to do certain things and getting more places to plug things. I'm not begrudging that. I just can't watch 6 hours of anything as far as programming for a pregame is concerned.
Well, and it's all attention span nowadays. You think that companies would understand that. You think 24 hours around the clock coverage of anything, people are going to be like, I'm checking out at some point. Used to be, I'm only 26, but back in the day, you'd get on DirecTV, Dish, your satellite provider or whatever, and you'd see a 30-minute carved out pregame show. That 30 minutes, there was so much compact in that had you ready for the 2-3 hour, 4 hour long game after the fact. But when you have 24 hours, you have a 6-hour pre-race show for a 2-minute race, I'm going to be burnt out by the time I get to the race. I'm going to know so much prior to the race in that 6 hours you've told me about it. I feel like I don't have to watch it.
Right. I know every jockey's wife. I know everybody. I know how many kids they have, but I really don't know how I'm going to pick. I don't know what's going to happen. So, yeah, it's and I get it. They're trying to do as much of a long-term show as they can possibly get out there for advertisers, but at some point in time, they got to realize that 6 hours is a little too much.
Yeah.
With that, any predictions for this upcoming week or any in the near future kind of stuff?
I got a couple.
Okay.
We talked about it a minute ago. NBA-wise, I do think the Nuggets are coming out to the Western Conference. I think the Celtics are going to win their series with the Sixers in 7 games. I think it's Celtics-Nuggets in the NBA Finals. And unfortunately, I think this is the year the Nuggets will win the NBA championship, knock off my Celtics. It's not something I want to say, but I had to say. Well, not had to, but that's, just being true to myself there. And then another one, I think ODA, we talked about the baseball earlier.
Yeah.
I think ODA is going to make a deep run in this. I think they make it to the championship game. I'm not going to say whether or not they win, but I think they make it to their championship game in the regionals. And then my next prediction, I think, is also going to come true. I'm fairly certain is that John Peacock will be back next week.
Well, I'll say this: the next show, because we're actually off next week. These guys are something. I don't know. These guys they got some place to go. They got all these fancy vacations plotted out. So we're giving them a break. Get ourselves rebooted a little bit, and we'll get back for a little run into the summertime. So yeah, but he will be back.
John Peacock will be back next show. There, I edited my prediction.
I think that's a very, very, very safe situation to put a prediction on. He will be back next show for sure. With that, I following your footsteps. Obviously, the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs are sort of on the cusp with everybody's mind right now. I'm gonna go hockey on this one. I'm gonna tell you that I'm thinking the Florida Panthers are going to come out of East. The way they beat Boston and then to come out against a really, really good Toronto team. They got a guy who's done it before in goal, Bobrovsky. He's a guy. So I'm going to go Panthers coming out of the East. And then I'm going to say in the West, as far as hockey is concerned, I've watched a few of the different games, but I'm going to say Stars come out of the West. Stars, Panthers.
Thought you were going to say Kraken.
Yeah, you know what? So their style of play, and they started talking about it the other night. They got that? Yanni Gord, who was a Lightning player. He's playing at the engine in that team, and they all play like him. So that's pretty good. But Panthers, Stars, and I'll wait the whole often who's going to raise the cup. But I like the Panthers and the Stars coming out from the East and the West. With that, we're done for our podcast for tonight. I'd like to thank John Reynolds, SNN Sports Director. John, we're going to have you back a lot. Okay,
looking forward to it.
As much as you can make it, we're probably going to use it up, and you probably say, "Stop asking me." But either way, or the guy asking for the autograph, we'll be that guy.
That's okay.
But it was a pleasure having you here tonight. Pleasure having you here at Douglas Jeep with us, and Monty and his staff for making us go through two sun.
That's okay.
Rises and closes there. He got a second sun in the face tonight, so that's good. It's probably a good thing for all of us when we're having a good night here tonight. With that, thank you for again joining us here at 941 Sports Zone. I'm John Massoni, and again for John Reynolds. See you here next time on the 941 Sports Zone. Good night.